Hi everyone, I'm here with Maria Magda, and she's going to share her story today on ADD, how she discovered it, what her insights are, what some of the challenges have been, and also as a parent and working in the Ministry of Education with schools in whānau and Tamariki. So I'm really excited to have you here and to hear your insights because you've got so much, and in your experience, you were sharing that you knew that you had dyslexia when you were younger.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I think it's amazing that you give a space for everyone to share and maybe, give a space for other people to feel seen,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
So yes, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was young, when I was in primary. And it has been a interesting journey. I found out about being ADD older, because unless you were hyperactive and annoying, it wasn't a thing. If you were okay in class and, you were a bit distracted or whatever, but you were not annoying, then it wasn't a problem. So it just, pushed to the side and go on with it. So, yeah. So I'm from Uruguay, South America. And when I was diagnosed, there wasn't much support for dyslexia. It was just something that you knew you had. And, but there wasn't a lot of understanding of what or how to help. There was more of she can't do this, she can't do that. Take her out of a bilingual school more than put in the support so that she can thrive. I guess it's a complicated journey when you feel different from your other peers. Yeah, I think it's an artist's journey when you're young and you feel you're different. You don't want to be different when you're young. You want to be as everyone else.
Yeah, you do.
And at a time where differences weren't valued, they were like something that wasn't right with you. And you feel weird. You feel you're not smart enough. You feel you're never going to achieve as much as everyone else because there's something there that's not working well, So that's a hard journey when you're growing up.
Yeah.
And I do think that it can break you or make you, and that's something that it's real. I was lucky enough to have parents of support. I was lucky enough that I was very resilient, and that helped me push and thrive and not accept a lot of you can't do this and push through it. And also a bit rebellious to you can't do that, then I'm going to show you and I'm going to do exactly what you tell me I can't do. So you can't learn 2 languages. I speak multiple languages, So when I finished school, I ended up going on to teaching. And I do think that being neurodivergent pushed me into this career so that I could help others.
Yeah.
I started in Uruguay. When I finished, I realized I didn't have enough tools to help kids that were different and had learning disabilities or that didn't fit within the little square that education puts everyone in. So I did a postgraduate in special education in Barcelona, Spain. And there's when my journey with neurodivergent children starts. I worked with kids with a lot of different disabilities. I worked in normal schools, and it was the beginning of the inclusion as a concept.
Yes.
Which it is a really, really beautiful concept. I don't think we have reached the point where there is inclusion in schools. We are integrating kids into mainstream, not necessarily including them.
It's a really complex subject, isn't it? Because I know that when you're talking about neurodivergence, it's a broad range.
Yeah.
And, like you and I both correlate to being ADD non-hyperactive. So the daydreamer. And that's exactly was my journey through school. I daydreamed out the window. I wasn't dyslexic. My partner's dyslexic. And I know that you, wonderful dyslexics, have incredible spatial reasoning and you're really creative in your orientation. You're visually different. So back in the day, it was considered a disability. And this is such an interesting debate. Is it a disability or a cognitive difference? I think from a brain architecture perspective, from everything I can see in the research and the data, it's a cognitive difference. However, when you're educating and when you are navigating a neurotypical world, it becomes a disability. It's because we have to do things differently.
We go back to concepts and political correctness and what we should say and what it is. And the truth is, the education system, since I went through it, I'm 53, and nowadays there has been very, very little change. We still, in a lot of ways, teach the kids the same way we were taught, and that is, it's heartbreaking, to be honest. So if I'm going to be like completely honest, it is a disability, because you get thrown into an education system that still prioritize normal neurotypical child. So if you come into that system where you are ASD or ADHD or even dyslexic, you're not going to fit in. You are going to feel you are not reaching certain standards or not doing certain things. And there is not much space in schools, because also you have to understand, teachers have the resources that I have. They don't have the knowledge, because they doesn't get taught to them while they're becoming teachers to deal with this kind of situation. So you've got 28 kids inside a classroom on your own, and this whole inclusivity is a myth, because 28 kids and you got one that's ADHD, one that ASD, and you've got a few kids that are dyslexic, and plus the other 24 kids. So it becomes a disability when you cannot have the support you need. And they go, no, but there is a system, the ministry should put, and in some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't. There's a lot of strain into teachers and into schools, and it becomes almost a little bit of, depending who the principal is, how much support is giving the teachers and how much support there is within the school, how much that child's going to thrive and how much the child's going to go forward and how good he's going to do at school. There is a really interesting study done by Dr. Nina Hood, which is called The Illusion of Inclusion in New Zealand. And
It's really bad.
It's really good. They interviewed around 2,500 teachers, whānau, asking about, if the kids were included. And the summarize to this is they're not. There is a lot of talk, and there is some schools will do better than others and get more support. But the truth is, there is a massive gap between people that are able to go private and pay for diagnosed, pay for support, and those who don't.
I got to tell you a story. 26 years ago, when my son was diagnosed with ADHD, non-hyperactive, and he was daydreaming out the window, and I realized his experience correlated to mine. And here I had a kid who at 3 could read the headlines of the newspaper, had really good friends outside of school, but at school was getting left behind, starting to struggle with friendships, starting to really go into a bigger fog and a bigger daydream, because I could see he was getting triggered all the time by the dynamic in the classroom. There were 35 kids. And, his teacher was wonderful, salt of the earth. I actually ran into her walking Mount Eden the other day and asked if she remembered what she said to me. And it was a normal school. And she said to me, if it wasn't for his older sister, we would think you were a bad parent. And, like that kind of hit me hard. It wasn't an insult, in context. It was actually quite a vast parallel. And it wasn't about his behavior. He was just disappearing into the background. He looked like a kid who was, somehow damaged, and yet he wasn't. He was just my beautiful little blue-eyed boy who couldn't survive in that environment. And about a week later, I remember her grabbing me on the arm gently and looking me in the eyes and saying, "Get him out of here." And I knew, I had been talking to her about the fact I was considering other learning environments. So she knew I did have resource. And we then went on a journey. It took us weeks to find an environment where he could learn. Him and I went together. We went to all these places. We went to Michael Parks. We went to different environments. And then we found this little homeschool group just around the corner from us with these 2 Montessori trained teachers. I've been reading the literature and the research, and I had no idea. I just tripped over it. And within 3 months of having that learning environment where there were 12 children, and I do not know to this day whether they were all neurodiverse. I know 3 of them were. But others of them were super, super freaked out in the public system because they were unique in their learning needs. And they simply couldn't cater in these big classes. And my son could read an adult version of Lord of the Rings faultingly at 8 years old, after 3 months in an alternate learning environment where he was given the chance for mastery. Someone was available to answer his questions. He could use the things he was interested in to learn, which is Pokemon at the time.
Yeah.
And so that Montessori method worked really well as an educationalist in understanding the pedagogy of learning. What are your thoughts around that?
I think there's like I think first thing that sort of pops up is, I can't believe we're still here. You know? Why are we still here? It's like, why are we still in this place? And it is really frustrating in a lot of ways. There's a lot of talk. There is way more information. We sort of half understand, what neurodivergent kids, or what it means, or what is there. The truth is, sadly, even within the education system, and this comes also from now a better understanding of how it works here in New Zealand, because I'm working within the system, I can assure you there's a massive percentage of educators within the system that have no idea what ADHD, for example, really means. Autism, yeah, a little bit. Also, it's a massive spectrum.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of times, and I have an anecdote from, parents going, "Oh, they don't know what it is," and that the kids that take the pills. So, yeah, some of them do, but no, it's just our brains work in a different way. It's not better, it's not worse, but it does work in a very different way. And if you are capable of seeing that and using it, usually a lot of us are way more creative. We have a different point of view from a different perspective that other people hasn't seen. A lot of us are empaths, so we can feel, we can see what's going on, So there is a lot of qualities that get sort of put aside because maybe they don't fit that little square that we should fit when we go into a school, and that's sad.
That is, Maria, I have this theory about my son, and I talk about it in my book, Hyper-Focused, which is coming out in May, because it was one of the things that really stood out to me about him that made him unique and different. Is at 3, we were walking up Mount Eden, a couple of kilometres away, with 3 boys up on the summit, and he was getting upset. He didn't like what was going on. He actually had tears in his eyes. And I didn't know how he could tell there was something not good going on. I couldn't hear anything. I could see them as shadows in the distance. And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And he said, "I can feel it."
Mm-hmm.
And we got up there, and sure enough, 2 boys were bullying another boy. And I looked at him and I said, "Do you want to do something?" And he said, "Yes, let's." And so we did an intervention, and actually it was a really good outcome.
Yeah.
Because who's gonna argue with a 3-year-old?
Yeah.
It wasn't long later that we were standing in the ice cream queue at St. Luke's, and he sort of tugs on my shirt and says, Mummy, that woman behind us is a witch." And I turn around and look at this really conservative woman behind me, and she leans down and says, "He's correct. Don't tell him all." And I'm thinking, okay, what can he see that I can't see? And I discovered he was highly empathic. He was the kid everyone went to when they had problems. And he could tell when someone was upset before they even knew. And so that meant that in a classroom of 35 kids, there was too much going on. He'd just associate out the window. And it started to dawn on me that I had the same thing myself, but I'd kind of pushed it down and ignored it. I was brought up as a fundamentalist Christian, and that was kind of considered evil. So it was a really interesting journey of discovering this, but it took me years to really discover Dr. Judith Orloff's work and her insights around empaths and empathy, to realize that we have a whānau of mirror neurons. We literally read the room. And as Gavin Mate would say, is it childhood trauma that causes us to stimulate the growth of more of these and makes us more hypervigilant? Or is it, in fact, something that we're born with. Nature, nurture, that debate will probably carry on
forever. And I do think what is really sad, because I had the same, when you grow up in an environment that doesn't accept who you are or makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, if I close my eyes, the vision that comes is like almost you start severing parts of yourself, because you are a starship and you have to fit in a square. So you go, okay, I need to cut this part of me and that one and this one and that one so that I can fit in this little square. Even if I don't fit perfectly, I can fit, So then that means when you're growing up, you're cutting parts of yourself to fit into that little square. And then when you grow up and you realize that, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And these are things that I like about myself. Going back and trying to become the star you were before, it takes such a long time. It takes
really does.
A lot of work. It took me, going to therapy, learning to meditate, going through a lot of journeys that were heartbreaking, because as I was growing up, I had to, or I thought I had to sort of make myself be something I wasn't.
Yeah.
And this is something that you can still see today in a lot of these kids that I encounter. And that's why I'm saying it's heartbreaking. And it is really frustrating. We're still talking a lot about, and there is more support. But it's not enough. And especially what it's not is there is still this underlying current going on under everything where, there is something wrong with that child. Oh, no, I wish she was normal. You go, wow.
No, she's sitting on a washing machine.
I know, but she's not a plunge. You're like, oh my gosh, and I know, I understand. I've been a teacher. You're in a classroom. It is annoying, and they take a lot of time. And it would be awesome if we honestly cherish diversity, because everyone is going to win.
Yeah.
When we accept that we're all different and we have different qualities and different things we're good at, and we learn from each other, it will make the environment so much better, because what I can bring into the environment is different from what you can bring, or different from someone whose brain works in a different way as us. So open up, don't be scared, and let it be. And I know it's easier said than done, but it would be awesome if we could honestly do less talking and learn more and do more.
Yeah. I love that you called it a star shape.
Yeah.
Because I weirdly, and I haven't figured out why I did it, I developed a program to help people be more their true selves. And I called it Flow Star. Yeah. Just because it sat with me. It's a little bit of a tattoo of the black star from David Bowie, because I met him years ago at a really critical point in my life. It was amazing. I had my marriage to the father of my children was ending, and I was in the UK, and a friend of mine had said, I'm going to take you out to cheer you up. I was feeling a bit glum, as you can understand. Yeah. And he took me to the Soho Club in London. And here I am in the Soho Club, young Kiwi, trying to be a bit cool. He said, what would you like to drink? And I thought, oh, sophisticated. I'll have a Lafroid whiskey, which I just discovered, and I love that. Right. Anyway, I'm so glad I asked for that, because he came back from the bar with 3 Lafroigs, one of which has been carried by David Bowie. Wow. And he knew him. He knew Bowie, and Bowie was kind of being his wingman. And I remember Bowie said to me, right off the bat, he looked at me and he said, so Kiwi, what are you going to do with your life? And I remember thinking, wow, that is David Bowie. He's got the 2 different colour eyes. He looks like a leprechaun. He's incredible. And we're drinking whiskey together. And then we just got chatting. Like, suddenly it didn't matter that he's this famous rock star and I'm just a Kiwi from New Zealand. It was like we're just talking like 2 people would talk. And we talked for ages. But I remember him asking me all these future-focused questions. And it pulled me out of the deep sadness I was feeling and into this kind of idea of, okay, well, I can travel more with my kids and I can do these things that I want to do more. And, it was not long before that I discovered my son's ADHD, and I was feeling already, challenged by that. Yeah. And I was doing my master's in education at the time. I was over the hallway from the special ed faculty. And I had all these resources, but nothing was landing.
No.
They were telling me he's disabled, he's got to have drugs, and he didn't want to take any drugs. And I'm thinking, but that's not who I know him to be. He's this little bright, blue-eyed kid who's funny and gets on well with people, who's highly sensitive and creative. And I don't think he's disabled. I think he's unique. And I was glad I held on to that because he never wanted to take the meds. So ironically, he does take them now at this point in his life. But, he's now a builder and he's working in construction and he's figured himself out and he's in a good place. But still, I was unable to protect him in his education journey because the Montessori homeschool only lasted a couple of years. We had to put him in other environments, and then I really struggled. And, he was comparing himself. Here he was, this little star-shaped neurotype. Yeah, trying to fit into a square, and he just couldn't, and his high empathy was misunderstood, and it just was never given a place where it was allowed to be. And so, it was a complex journey, and I had little snippets of understanding around it until I was researching, and boy, did I research. I've spent 20 years researching everything on the subject, and I can tell you the experts differ. The medical profession, the educationalists see it as a disability, and the neuroscientists are seeing it as a different brain architecture. And
I think that we still have a long path to go, but I do think that for me, one of the things that was shocking is when I was working in Barcelona, and this is before my son was born, maybe 16 or 15 years ago, we already had an understanding of what ADHD was, because there is a branch of the Children's Hospital in Barcelona who's dedicated to learning difficulties and neurodivergent type of kids. And they have all this studies and resources and that schools can use for free. And so we had a course in ADHD done 15 years ago that still is viable or works perfectly for today. For me, one of the surprises of coming into New Zealand, it was quite interesting. I did a course on vulnerability and kids and what's going on. And the policeman who said is like, oh, everyone has this vision of New Zealand of being this like beautiful country where everything works and everyone loves each other and everything's perfect. And then, which is true to some extent, is an amazing place to live. But there's fear of confrontation, there's fear of things that are different. So then what happens is we almost don't talk about it. And if we do, we talk about the, all this, rainbow things that we're doing and, all this, or neurodivergent, we all inclusive and everything. And there's inclusivity, but we don't talk about the hard parts and the things that are not that pretty, and what the truth about what's happening at schools where there is behavioral issues. There is a lot of teachers that have to confront aggression and fear, and they don't have the tools, they don't have the support, and it's not easy. And also the underlying truth and reality that for a lot of whānau, having a child that is neurodiverse, it's not a gift. It is scary. They don't know what to do about it. They have no support. They don't know where to go. And it becomes a problem because a lot of these kids ended up being suspended from school, being excluded, can't move forward because there is no where to go.
You've just hit on exactly my motivation for doing this work that I consider myself fortunate to be able to do, and I'm grateful to have a small little window in sharing these stories in this podcast series, Hall Hutch, but also to being able to write my book. Because when I found this learning environment for my son, even though he was only there for 2 years because the teachers, the children grew beyond the teacher's capacity to teach through the curriculum, I promised myself that I would do something with this later on because I knew I was well-resourced. And I was studying education. I was working as an executive, and so I had money and I could pay for psychologists, I could pay for support, and yet there were very little answers. And so I dedicated 20 years of research, really, where I've read everything on the subject that you can think of. And I plugged it into ChatGPT to see how comprehensive it was, thinking that was going to tear it to shreds. And after about 5 different attempts at asking it to sort of rework and review my lit review, it couldn't give me anything new. And so I asked it to go into the forums of conversations that were happening in the world of ADHD globally and the forums of those forums and into any channel it could find that had anything to do with the subject of neurodiversity, specifically ADHD, because I had to keep myself relatively narrow. And it came back telling me everything that you and I have been talking about now, and then also this predisposition towards adults being diagnosed, mainly because their children got diagnosed. And so, this kind of like co-relationship, it is becoming something that we're talking about more and more. I get really wound up by that comment. You get a lot out there. Oh, isn't it just trendy to be ADHD right now? And I'm thinking, no, it's not. It's not a gift, but it is unique. And when you understand your star shape and can allow it to emerge, you actually can function fully, but you've got to navigate your life differently when it comes to neurotypical systems and worlds. And the education system is firmly sitting in that.
And I do think that it is a gift, but you can only understand that it's a gift after you go through so much hardship and so much heartbreak and so much pain within your journey, and you survived. Because we're lucky. For whatever reason, a lot of things, made us resilient, and we have learned to manage it, to have tools, to build things so that we can navigate this world. But I can tell you, a lot of people that just got lost in the journey.
Yeah.
So it is a gift. Yes, I do believe that for me, it's a gift. Now, I'm 53. Did I feel it was a gift when I was growing up, when I was, in the school system, when I was even in my 20s? No, it didn't feel like a gift. I feel weird. I didn't understand what was going on half of the time. And I didn't understand why I had to feel like I was like a Martian living on Earth. Now I like being a Martian. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I think it's great to be different.
Yeah.
But it took me a lot of years and a lot of heartbreak and a lot of pain. So I understand the journey, and I understand how scary it can be and how heartbreaking it can be for tamariki, for whānau. Growing up, it is not much fun. And it is heartbreaking. And I go back to that. How are we exactly, or more or less, in the same place we were 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Why are we still here? There's a lot of reasons, I think. And honestly, this study done by Dr. Nina Hood about the illusion of inclusion in New Zealand does give you a snippet in what's going on. And it is about, not enough support at schools. Also, it could take you up to a year to get a diagnosis. Okay? If you can't pay for it.
Yeah.
And for me, what it means when you have this label, it helps you understand that, yes, there's not something broken. Your brain just works in a different way. So I'm dyslexic. I go, okay, fine. It's like, I know that, I've got problems. I've got dysgraphia, and I've got dysnumeracy. Okay, fine. So what tools can I use? Because I won't be able to spell or work. So if I remember standing in front of a class when I was a teacher, and I was living and working in Barcelona, and I was an English teacher. And I remember, and I also was a Catalan teacher. And so I learned but that is out of being really stubborn, which is a good thing and not. And as my husband, he won't. That's a good thing. I think I'm not stubborn. He thinks it's a bit annoying, but yeah. But what I'm saying is, I remember standing in front of a class going, guys, I'm dyslexic. If there's any, misspelling and stuff, just let me know. And I used to have a little dictionary at the time. Now I use my phone because, yes, this is who I am. But it took me a long time. It was embarrassing for me to accept that when we were young. And it still is embarrassing for a child at school. If it's ADHD and they can't, or they're not able to sustain the whole length of a class, being able to fidget, being able to go, miss, you know what, I need a break. Can I go out and take a breather? God, no. You're disrupting the classroom. You can't do this. It's like, this kid needs a different environment. And they're thrown into a classroom where it's noisy, it's overwhelming, and they don't have a time where they go, I need to breathe. Yeah. And that would be Get out of the classroom for 5 minutes. Okay, Johnny, get out. You know, go outside, take a breather, take 10 minutes, come back in. No. Be quiet. Don't move. Oh, it has to be silent in class. Some kids cannot be silent. Not because they don't want to, not because they're not making the effort. You know, there is this misconcept that, oh no, that he's misbehaving because he's not making an effort. He's not doing well enough because he's not making an effort. If he wanted to, he could. No, he can't.
Yeah.
He cannot.
No. And, you know, the reality is my son needed to move. He couldn't sit still for hours on end without going into a daydream. He needed to be in his body. He needed to do things that include balance, so skateboarding, drumming, things that kind of did left hand, right hand movements and left brain, right brain. And all of those things really helped his brain light up. But there was nothing wrong with his brain. It just worked differently to the average bear. And so he needed a unique learning environment.
We all wired differently. Why are we still trying to make people that are wired different get into a classroom, sit down, and do exactly the same thing as if it was 40 years ago? I don't understand. And there is a lack of understanding that when we talk about behaviors, and there's this model called the iceberg model. Okay.
Yeah.
So the iceberg model is above water, the iceberg is a little bit there. And this is all the behaviors that you see. No, it's like, oh, he's misbehaving, he's being aggressive, he's answering back, he's not quiet, blah, blah. Those are the behaviors you see. Underline is the needs. So if we don't understand or we don't start focusing on what's the need that makes the behavior happen and address those needs, then the behavior is never going to change.
No.
And we continue focusing on an education system where everyone has to be quiet, everyone has to be sitting down, everyone has to be still. You go, that is not going to work. If every child wants to succeed, every child wants to do well. I don't think any kid goes into school going, oh, you know what? I'm going to be disruptive today. This is going to be really cool. No, it's not true. Every child that goes into school wants to do well. Sometimes they don't have the resources, they don't have the support, and they don't have the understanding that will help them succeed.
Yeah.
And this is where us as adults and the education system is failing them. Not them failing us, we are failing them. And there's no, oh, no, but no, there's no but. If you've got an issue in the education system where a lot of these kids are failing, look into it because the problem is ours. It's not theirs. It's our responsibility as adults to support them, to help them, and to help them succeed. Not their responsibility. It's ours.
I love you sharing this, Maria, because it's so powerful what you're saying. Tell me, what are some of the things that you've learned to do work?
First of all is addressing fear. As human beings, we're always scared of what we don't know. So the more information we have, the more we read, the more we get into, and nowadays it's so easy. Okay, you can get a bunch of articles, a bunch of studies, put them in ChatGPT and go, summarize.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And it does. And then you get the most important points. So I do think that every one of us has a responsibility to understand when we talk about neurodivergency, what it means. So go into it. And it doesn't have to be hours and hours. It just has to be a mild understanding of when we talk about ADHD, what is it? When we talk about ASD, autism, what is it? When we talk about someone who's dyslexic with all the different denominations, what does it mean? And then we have a little bit of an understanding. And especially if you work in education, as a teacher, you need to have this information. As a principal, definitely. There's a lot of, learning that you can do. Do it. And then give space. Don't be scared. A lot of being a teacher is like, oh, they don't respect me because they're talking. Or maybe it's not about respect. Maybe it's about trying to work with kids as a team. And a lot of times it's going to work and sometimes it's not. And it's not easy, and I understand. But try to make them work with you. Try to make them part of your team. It's like going on a waka, and I'm, going that way and you're, trying to steer the other way, and the other one's, we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to end up going in circles, But if we all understand that we're all in this waka together and we all have to rule and go to the same place, then we're going to go far. Okay. For that, you have to try to get, the whānau, tamariki, the whole teachers, everyone in the same boat, rowing to the same place.
What is some advice you would have for parents who are navigating this?
First of all, I feel for you. And I think one of the things that works best is because there's a lot of guilt as a parent. There is a lot of guilt.
I relate to that. Yeah.
A lot of guilt. A lot of, is it something that I did? Is it something that I should have been done differently? And this comes with parenting in general. I've got 2 boys where you always go, oh, what if, or should I, or maybe, and you go, yeah, maybe I should have, or maybe when, so there's a lot of that doubting and guilt and not knowing if you've done it properly. So that's the first thing. So sometimes what helps a lot is listening to other parents in the same situation as you. First of all, you will feel seen, you will feel heard, and you will realize that other people are in the same situation as you do, which will help with the guilt and the understanding of what you're going through. And also they might have resources or they might have tried things that have worked or haven't worked. So you can share experiences and know what the other has done and what, where you can go or what works. So that helps a lot for parents. And then another thing that I suggest is be annoying, be a pain in the butt, go to school, talk to the principal, talk to the teacher, advocate for your child. And it's exhausting because we all work, have a lot on our plates, but there is no other way.
Yeah.
You have to fight for your child and don't be scared. Don't feel embarrassed. Go for it. Go explain. Teach them if you need to. Explain what your child or how he is or what he needs and fight for it. And then there's a lot of resources within the Ministry of Education that you can ask for. If there's behavior issues, there's RTLB, you can ask for it. You can ask if, they might need teacher aid, if it's possible, if it's not. So advocate for your child and also do things that are fun for the both of you because it's going to be a really tiring, exhausting journey. So also have fun.
Yeah. That's such good
along the way,
because it can be so difficult. And, having had a neurodiverse child who's now an adult, and a daughter who's neurotypical, I found that it was really hard to balance because my neurodiverse child by default got more attention because everything was more difficult and harder to navigate than it was for her. And so at times I feel like she got left out. And it's that whole sibling thing, isn't it? But you're trying to do this balancing act. You're managing your own guilt. In my case, I was working out my own neurodiversity and just learning about it while trying to help him understand his, and then also being there for my daughter as well, thinking to myself, oh gosh, she's at such a disadvantage. She's got a neurodiverse mum and brother. How much fun is that right now?
Yeah, but at the same time, it would have been easier for her to fit into the world.
It did fit.
Because I'm not saying that it's not true, but it's like the world was built for right-handed. You buy a pair of scissors, the knob, everything. So if you're left-handed, you have to work harder. Well, this is the same. If you're neurotypical, I guess not always. There's a lot of circumstances, but it's more fluid than if you're not. So there is no formula that works for everyone. But don't be scared. Part of our job as a parent is to advocate for our children, and it's not always easy. And we don't always like our children. Sometimes we dislike our children. We will love them with all our hearts, but sometimes they're really annoying. And that is okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
This is also part of the journey. Don't feel bad if there's moments when you go, my gosh, I'd rather be sitting in Bali drinking a drink than being with these horrible children that are mine. Wait, what am I doing wrong? Exactly. What am I doing wrong? It's fine.
Yeah.
It's good. You're going to love your kids unconditionally. You don't have to like them all the time. It's fine. But fight for them because you're the only one that truly understands your kid in a lot of ways. And they are expecting us to fight for them and do so. Don't be embarrassed. Go for it. And if they don't understand you at that school, maybe it's time to move them. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. That's right. I certainly didn't regret it that day, and it sent me on this journey to research and understand everything so that I would be in a position to one day write a book, which I have now done, and it's in editing, to share my story in the hope that another parent and another adult with ADHD will be able to read it and get some insights. I've also shared what I've discovered about the data and the research to make it a little bit easier to navigate, because I think that's a hard thing. I started reading everything I could get my hands on, and I thought, oh gosh, it's so dichotomous. Disability, the cognitive difference, and how do I even begin to approach this? And I feel like I learned everything the hard way. So I want to share what I've learned, what I know does work. And what you're right there, Maria, working with other parents, getting alongside them, advocating for your child and whatever education system they are in, and then looking at alternate learning environments that will cater to their unique needs. And it's working out what their unique needs are, working with your educational psychologist, working with what resources you have available at your fingertips. I'm glad to hear that there are RTLBs accessible, that there are rich resources at the Ministry of Education, that they can access those.
Yeah. It's hard, huh? Every application for everything has a lot of bumps and pushing back, and but go for it. I mean, I know it's exhausting, and I know it could be discouraging, and I know it can be tiring as a parent, and I know also it's not very comprehensive. Also, we are still in a system where, depending on what diagnosis you are, you're being sectioned, like, oh, this part of you is supported by the Ministry of Health, that part of you is supported by the Ministry of Education, that part of you is, and parents go, because there's no sort of holistic approach to any of it. But I don't think there's any other way of doing it, that just fighting and advocating for your kids. And don't think because there's a lot out there and because there's a lot of talk about neurodivergent and ADHD and ADD and ADHD that people understand what it is. Even a principal at school or a teacher, a lot of them will probably not have an understanding of what it means and how it affects every child differently. Especially with ADHD, it's quite funny. It's like, oh yeah, it's the annoying child that's always bouncing around. Well, yes and no. Having ADHD doesn't mean that you're going to be bouncing around.
Yeah. No, my son was an under-responder, and I had to look at the children that were the hyperactive ADHD, who were the over-responders with envy, and go, I wish he would over-respond. And so someone would actually, it's equally and oppositely difficult. I didn't have any behavioural problems, but I had a kid who went off into a daydream because he was overwhelmed, which made him look lazy. Yeah. Like he wasn't trying, like he had no attempt to make an effort. And that was a nightmare to deal with.
Yeah, no, that's why it's really hard sometimes, because there's so many stereotypes of what it means to be neurodivergent, and breaking those stereotypes. So we can only do it by explaining and having an understanding of what we're talking about. And sadly, even in the education system, a lot of people do not know. So don't assume, explain. Over-explain, do it 1,000 times, talk to other parents. But if you can, and if you have time, and I know it's hard, be part of the school life. Go to, if you can, go to sports things and volunteer and go into the school, because also you will have a relation with other parents, and sometimes that's another thing you need to do as a parent. Explain, my child is different. My child thinks in a different way. His brain works in a different way. And that's why he reacts in a certain way. And then parents will understand, and that will permeate into the kids. And because it's really hard, because a lot of these children get cast aside because they're different and because adults don't understand their behavior. So yeah, it's a hard journey, and I understand it's not easy. And I'm sorry that, in a way, I know that a lot of parents feel like they're not supported, and that the education system and a lot of us working within the education system are not providing the support that we should. And it is true. It's a reality.
You shared really candidly your insights and, what parents can do and your own journey, which is really valuable. Appreciate that so much. Is there any final comments you'd like to leave us with today before we wrap up this session?
I think the only thing is, I know it's not easy, and I know that it might not feel that way right now, but if you do have a child that is neurodivergent, or if you're neurodivergent, it can be a gift. Try to think outside the box. Try to look at that person and try to look at yourself through a different lens and discover that, yes, maybe you're not good at whatever, that specific little thing that they do at school or they do at work, but look yourself and see what makes you special, what makes you different, what can you bring onto the table that a lot of other people, because they're neurotypical, are not able to see, and realize that those are your superpowers. Use them.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us today. It's been great hearing your candid advice and stories that are real from the engine room. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.